Good morning, everyone. As Jeff mentioned, I work for Tridel, and I don't know how many in the audience are familiar with what we do, but we build condominium communities. We also build senior communities. And for the last 10 years, I've been on a bit of a mission towards connected communities and getting more technology into our products. There's been successes, still a lot of struggles, and I agree with the fact that there's still a lot of work to be done. And the reason I'm so passionate about this and why I really want to see this happen for Canada is that you have such great research and you see such amazing technologies being developed here. And now we're building buildings. And buildings last a long time. And if the infrastructure is not in those buildings, everything that they're doing is not going to work. And that's the message that I'm going to really try to bring out here. You need to be able to connect the devices. And if you can't connect the things, nothing's going to work. And it's fundamental that we shift how we build our buildings today so that we're ready for the future. We know the population's aging. We know what their research is. We know what we need to do. But let me start with the question about why. So why for Tridel would this be important? Well, we sell real estate. Population is aging. So how do we build the right product for the future? One thing about our company, more than 30% of the people that buy from us bought from us before. We take pride in our brand. We want to make sure we're ahead of the curve. We want to build places where people want to live, meaning they're secure, they're sustainable, and they're convenient, and we can offer the services that we need to. And then here I show a slide of Savant smart home technology. This is taking off. And I don't know how many in the audience have heard of IoT, Internet of Things, big buzzword. Thank God it's out there. Even though I don't like that the media tends to overblow things like cloud and the rest of things, but they're putting attention on Internet of Things, and Internet of Things is all about connectivity. And now you're seeing it take off, and it's a positive thing. I was at the Consumer Electronics Show this last year, and I went to the Consumer Electronics Show several times over the past years. Maybe 6 years ago was my first time. The first time I went, I walked in there, and I went only because one of the guys that works with me, his dream was to go to the Consumer Electronics Show, because he's a gadget guy. He wanted to go there, so I went with him. And I came away and I thought, well, there's really no business value for me. I don't think I'm going to go again. Went last year, and you see this here, there was over 1,000 smart sensor and home solutions. It completely flipped around that now we're going and now we have to be there every single year. You can see the movement towards this area and the importance of it. And nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I really do hope that we've been pushing a rock up a hill for 10 years and it's going to start rolling like crazy down the other side. So where are we trying to get to? We're trying to get to just right now, and there's some things that we've actually been successful at Tridel that we've gotten into our buildings. And here's really where we're trying to get to at the most fundamental level. And the first part I want to share is an interesting story. They bring in bankers into a $2 million suite. And they're all hanging out the balconies trying to make their phones work. And it's like, so would you live in a building, would you live in a home where your phone doesn't work? And what about your kids? Would they live in a suite where the Wi-Fi sucked? Probably not. So the first part of this, be it a senior's home or be it a condominium, communications is fundamental. Your phone's got to work. You have to have good internet access and connectivity. That infrastructure has to be there. And I guess one thing that is successful that's happened with the company over this last little while is now the buildings are moving into utility internet models. And by that what I mean is one provider is giving internet access to everybody in the building, doing it at a very low cost, at a very high speed. And what's fundamental about that is now gives you a building network, a way to connect the devices, and the research that Alex is doing, it can start to rely on these networks that are actually going in our buildings today. And then building services, and this is a place where we're doing a lot of innovation right now around is, can I do everything in my home off my smartphone? Can I integrate access control, security, energy, health services, all those pieces? And really what that involves is a home gateway. All a home gateway is just a box that everything can integrate to. It can connect to any sensor, it can connect to your security system. And this is a place where we're working hard right now to do some innovation. And we're partnered with several companies. Intel out of the US right now is very interested in doing a trial with us in this area about creating a solution that works in a multi-dwelling unit. So what's different about a building to a regular home? You can pretty much anyone in the room, you could get somebody, you can do smart home, not a problem. You can look at the cameras in your house, do your thermostat. But when you get to a building, what's different is, or even a senior's building, there's a common area that you have no access to. So if you're trying to do it your home smart home, you can't see the front door camera. You can't see the parking systems. There's a lot of systems that you need help with to integrate to. But this is the vision of where we're trying to go. Good communications and some basic services. And in the future, we can integrate more and more to this gateway into this infrastructure. And these are services that matter. The one thing in this whole journey in trying to sell this, and this is always an interesting thing because you go through these ROI discussions. So how do you, and Tridel is interesting because there's 4 owners, there's 5 senior vice presidents. Every time you present a business case, you get ripped apart. And you can never prove it out because no one's really done this stuff. What's interesting was the turning point. The turning point was one time in like total exhaustion, I just said to them, does anybody in this room believe this isn't going to happen? Does anybody in the room want to stand up and say that this technology is not going in our buildings? Nobody stood up. So where do you want to start? And it took all the nonsense out of it because it is about how do we make this happen? We got to make this happen. This is important. And what I started to find out, it's not the cognitive side, the rational side that makes the decision. It's this emotional side. For example, they developed, at TRI developed a fall down camera that can detect someone's fallen down using video, can call to them. When I said that to my boss, he goes, wow, that's amazing, because my mom has a pendant, and if she falls down, she doesn't want to push the button because she doesn't want to bother me. Right? Those emotional responses, those things that people can identify. So we started to switch our storyline into emotional things. I have a newborn baby. What services can I offer? What kind of monitoring connectivity? I want to make sure my kids made it home from school. I'm going to Florida for 6 months, somebody watched my home. My parents are aging, I want to know that they didn't leave the home. I want to monitor my energy, I want to monitor my family's health. And when we start to talk about these personal, identifiable situations, we actually start to drive action and decision. So how do you make it and make this happen? And really my point in this whole talk was actually to get down to the practical. How do you really make this happen? And what's been driving this and how we've been hitting some successes. I'm not a great slide creator, as you can tell, but anyway, the basics. So what do you need to make this happen? And I boil it down into 3 different pieces. The network. If you can't connect everything, you can't do anything. That's your starting point. You need a network, a way to connect every device and every interface in the home. Analytics or big data, as Alex spoke to it, is you need to be able to analyze that information and you need to somehow connect compute. And then finally you have a presentation layer. You need to be able to feed back to people, either through a smartphone, through a robot, through a television, but there needs to be a presentation layer. You need all 3 of those pieces to actually realize this. And then what is a network? And this is an interesting slide because then again, Tridel, the oldest brother, is 83 years old. So how do you explain to these guys what is a network? What does it really mean? And this slide, year in year I kept on doing these presentations. This was the turning point slide. This is what a network is. Your body doesn't have a separate nervous system for your touch, doesn't have a separate nervous system for sight, for your muscles, your actuators. It has one nervous system. Your hand feels something hot, it tells to pull its hand away. It's the same thing in a building. Instead of having a separate wiring system for every single thing that's in a building, why not put it all on the same wiring system so the building can start to interact and react? And this was the turning point slide that all of a sudden they understood what a network was and why it was important. And then next generation buildings, this is just a slide kind of that follows on the previous that says, instead of having independently wired systems, everything's running on the same backbone. So your internet to your suite is on the same as your security system. So all it really is in the technology world, I can make one wire look like it's 7 wires, and everything's sharing the same infrastructure. And the reason that's important is, so why a network? Because if you put in a network, instead of putting 7 or 8 different wiring systems in a building, you can put one, and it will save construction costs. And we built one seniors building that we did in a smart and connected way, and I was actually there working on site with them, and we could see it. And the consulting engineers were doing a lot of things that were silly, that were wasting costs. For example, they were putting outlets next to wireless access points. They didn't understand how to leverage the technology. The one story I always share about that was I actually went on site, and my roots are that I started as a construction super. So I was actually on site with the foreman from the electrical company, wiring this first connected building. And he looks down at the drawings and he looks up at me and he goes, "What is all this effing shit?" And it was like, it hit me because the challenge that I think that we all face is that I hang out with all these people who understand this, and that at that point I realized, we just need to educate more. And that was like, it was an eye-opening moment. And instead of preaching and saying you have to do this, spending a little bit more time teaching, so that once they understand it, it really isn't that hard. The second piece of a network is it's the fastest way to deliver internet, and communications are fundamental to everything. And then scalability. That the network, all the research that's being done here, it needs a network to connect these sensors, so it's fundamental. And of course, I have to say it over and over again. If you can't connect sensors and devices, none of what you're hearing here is possible. And that's why we're pushing so hard to get building codes changed, to get standards changed, so we don't build another dumb building, because it doesn't make any sense. Every building needs to be equipped with this infrastructure to be able to do the things that we know we need to do. It's incredibly important for Canada in general. When you go to Asia, the buildings are connected. The buildings do have these networks. So that's the part that I'm really passionate about seeing happen in Canada. And a community portal. So we're partnered with a company called Bazinga. So all of our communities have this presentation layer. So they can book a party room. And the idea is to scale this in the future so that someone buzzes you at the front door, I go to my portal. I want to see my energy, I go to my portal. I have a package delivery, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of that later, I go to the portal. And the fascinating part of it is, and without reading what's on this screen, they actually have in these portals these Facebook loop kind of things, where the people are having discussions within this platform. And the stuff we're learning about the resident experience is amazing. When you just watch conversations, I think so much of the world has gone into this survey. Let me survey and ask you the 5 questions to find out, the 5 things, versus just let people talk and watch what they say. And we've learned incredible things about how frustrated people are with communications in the building. How can we improve the living experience? Because that's really what we're all about. We want people to love living in these buildings. So the business case. How do you pay for this stuff? And that's been the hard part. And that is coming together now, finally. So the first one is lower construction costs. Now most people, I don't know if you can identify what's wrong with this picture. You've got 7 4-inch pipes to carry the wiring into this building. That's finished. So you see that little tiny strand, that black thing coming through the middle pipe? That's the entire internet infrastructure to this whole building. Yet they put in 7 pipes because they built the building like it was an old building. Those 7 pipes are $14 a foot. They run all the way through and out to the property line, and it was all wasted. And the thing about this is you can talk to your blue in the face to the owners and nobody believes you, but when you see a picture like this, it hits you. And then this one's another one that's interesting. It's again hard to see. This is a telecommunications closet that's it's about 12 square feet, maybe a little more than that. It's finished. So that little box is all that's in there. So you're thinking downtown Toronto, it's $700 a square foot at least, $700 to $1,000 a square foot. So how much did this little room cost because you didn't, get with the times? So the good thing is they learned from this. In our newer buildings, this has been shrunk. That little box can just sit in a furred out wall and you could sell that space. So you can see that, again, creating a change in the industry, but pictures are powerful. And then in our seniors building, the business case was driven by a few different things. So in the older buildings, the telephones, they were offering their telecommunications, TV, internet, and phone to the residents was being offered using conventional residential services through Rogers, etc. So they ended up putting in their own telephony system. So there's something, and I know it's probably not a technical audience, I'm not sure, but there's something called Sept trunking. They put in their phone system. SIP trunks are really cheap, $15 a channel. 4 people can be on the same channel. Phone costs $3.75 a resident. So you think of what a residential phone line costs, that's what our cost is. Television was being offered to the residents, and we were buying residential television. We found out that because it's basically a rental building, we started buying it commercially. We were able to buy it at half the price. So we were saving $30 a unit per month because television was included. And now there's something called over-the-top offerings. In Toronto, you're finding all kinds of companies coming in and offering TV using internet versus the traditional Bell and Rogers approaches. So these two things started to drive the business case. So what we did is we put in network infrastructure, proper network infrastructure into the seniors building. I went 5 minutes. And we were able to drive the business case. The second piece was, instead of the residents buying internet from Rogers or Bell, we started offering it ourselves. And what's on the screen right here is a business case. And you can do this business case all day long in any type of commercial building. Buy internet from the cheapest fiber that's in the street, distribute it, and charge for it. So in the past, residents were paying Rogers or Bell $50 or $60 a month. We started to pay us $50 a month. And now the building actually it's funding the cost of the network, it's funding the cost of the fiber, so now you've got a highly connected building, and not only did it not cost you more, it cost you less, you're actually making money from it. And this is the kind of business case, and now what the success was, we're about to renovate one of our other properties, all this infrastructure is going in, we have a connected building that's going to support what they do. Here's another one we did in downtown Toronto, where this is an electronic concierge. So this building is fully connected. Vanessa's the first Canadian e-concierge. She's sitting 20 kilometers away from the building. She can fully control it. She can control the doors. She can receive packages. We cut the operating cost of the building in half because she can manage 4 buildings. Cellular, and I won't get into too much on this, but cellular, they don't have enough capacity to handle the growth of cell phones. One of the business models that we've been driving now is we're letting them project cellular off of our buildings because we have the right access, and they're paying and they're helping drive the cost of the building. Sustainability and energy. And this is the very interesting one, and I think this is going to be a real game changer. These lockers are being planned into our next buildings. These are IP-based lockers where you can procure services through them. Package delivery has taken off like crazy. So in some of our buildings, we're getting 60 to 80 packages being delivered a day. The idea now with this is using our portal, people are able to procure services. So an example, I want my dry cleaning done, I hang it in the locker, I leave, I come home from work, I pick it up, it's done. They're able to cool these things, you can receive food, you can receive groceries. You can see that there's going to be a fundamental shift here. I think the old world of traditional advertising is vanishing. If you think about your Expedia account, you think about Amazon. I buy all my books off Amazon. How often do I go and cross-check my pricing? Once in a while, but you trust it. It's simple, it's easy. The same thing with Expedia. Almost all my travel just because it's easy. And that's where we're going now. There's a service delivery platform being incorporated into our communities. They can deliver pharmaceuticals, they can deliver food. And you imagine I want my home cleaned. I click, I want it cleaned on Friday. It automatically takes the money out. The person shows up on Friday and cleans. A good example of, there's a lot of companies coming in. One of them is interesting is Penguin Pickup, who we're talking to a little bit right now, that they're connected with Walmart, connected with WagJag. There's a company called Alfred that's actually doing the dry cleaning pieces. So we're seeing this model emerge. So you think about it, what a shift that is to retail. Or you think of like a Walmart, how much would they love to be delivering into this system, into the center of the city versus being confined to the outside. So these are some interesting models that are coming forward that help drive this change. So the conclusion, the first part to us, living experience is the key. It's got to be secure, it's got to be sustainable, convenient, and it's got to be able to address what we know the future needs are. Communications is the core. We need networks in these buildings. And again, would you live in a home where you have terrible internet and your phone doesn't work? Not likely. It's fundamental and it's key to what we need to do as a builder. You need a network, you need a presentation layer, be it the television, be it your smartphone, be it a robot, and you need analytics. You need the cloud connected to this thing. You need the connectivity into this building so you can run the compute to actually deliver those services. The main business drivers, utility internet. Everybody in the building getting internet from the same provider instead of all of them going to different people. It drives value. You get it cheaper and you get good solid connectivity. This service delivery I think is going to be fundamental to the future. We're seeing it happen right now and it's just a logical thing. I think dumb advertising is done. How often does that work? And I think this is a major paradigm shift in the industry where you can make delivery of services very easy and convenient using these types of locker systems, and the cellular case as well. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions.
Hands up anyone who expected a talk like that in a hospital at 8:30 in the morning. We didn't mention a Band-Aid or an antibiotic once. But these things are going to affect everyone's living. And I've talked about living in your own homes, but the whole business of what your own homes are is going to be a very, very interesting thing into the future, and how we fund living in our own homes, and how we fund retirement homes and cooperative housing and things. And it's with some excitement that I'm going to introduce in a minute Trish. But first of all, do you have a challenging question for Ted? Yes, Alison. It's coming.
Thank you. Really, really interesting. So, Jeff probably has spoken to you. We work with changing the building codes and know some of the challenges that are associated with that. So, when you talk about you're trying to get these changes in the infrastructure into the building codes, what sort of challenges are you facing with them, and what strategies are you going to do to have them become part of the Warner code?
It's interesting because it seems to be naturally kind of happening. We partnered, so in this whole thing I never spoke to all the different partnerships. We were partnered with IBM, partnered with Cisco, partnered with Samsung, partnered with Intel, anyway, all the way down the line. But with Cisco, I don't know if anybody here had ever met Rick Hybrids. Him and I ended up doing a lot of road shows kind of. So we started speaking to Newmarket, Town of Markham, and it just started to spread, people wanting to hear that story. And then with that, they started to ask us. So example, they were starting to write the standards for the builders and what they had to adhere to, and started sending us the information to get the feedback. So I think it goes back to my electrician story of the education. The more we speak on it, the more because when you do the pitch that I just said, was like, you need to connect these buildings. As soon as you do that, it seems to wake people up, and it starts to cause. Another one was I spoke at an event with John Campbell from Waterfront Toronto, and he heard it. And it made him say, okay, we're building senior buildings down there. I want to make sure we do these things. So it's getting out there, spreading the word, that communication, and it seems to be working.